Hey guys, you'll find out later why I'm being filmed so badly. Stay tuned. But this is just gonna be us talking about Apollo, some basic questions, going over how it works, issues, things to improve.
Sorry, who are you?
I'm Green, co-president of Imperial K-pop Sock. It came out because we can't do things in person, and we didn't want to like bank anything on being like maybe things will be better later.
But I mean,
So
we
that's
did.
just one way.
That was the entire breaking
I mean, we
stage.
did.
Because with a virtual competition, right, there's always bias. It's either a popularity contest or it's like the judges are basing you based on like previous performances.
And also, lest we forget, the pretty privilege and the skinny privilege. People are naturally more drawn to someone who's more attractive, which is fine, like everyone is like that. But it doesn't reflect their necessarily their dancing ability.
That's true, yeah. Because like you could have the full makeup, the full look, and dance mediocre, and that would look better to the eye than someone who's wearing like normal clothes and dancing way better.
And someone who's skinnier and versus chubbier. This didn't come into play with Apollo, but with live performances. When you have the money to get outfits that are all cohesive and like you can get costumes and everything, you look better as a group, which brings money into it.
I think that was like another key point though with Apollo, right? We wanted it to be free. We wanted it to be like, you know, anyone can join.
Yeah, and like even if you're like doing it in the kitchen and there's like hub around you, it's fine. Like you don't need to be like doing it in this really cool setup in your nice clothes. Just be in your PJs.
We did get a few entries of people in their PJs. I think one of mine was in PJs.
I think my entry was in pajamas. It was in a pajama top and then trousers. We move.
I think the main point with Apollo was the fact that I'm basically doing it for my thesis. I think that was...
I honestly I think that like came from it. I think we wanted to do something and then you were like, I could do AI, and then you were like, oh, and that could be my thesis, and we were like...
I showed my supervisor Apollo. He basically told me how to do the like comparisons, so like the side-by-side thing for the idols. When I mentioned the dancing, he was like, it would be really cool diving. So how did the sort of design of it come about?
Bro, I'm thinking about how long it took us to pick the name Apollo.
I think we were on call for 5 hours.
And then literally the next day we were like, what about just Apollo?
No, because we like, you mentioned Apollo, and then we were like, yeah, maybe, but something else would be cooler.
Because we also like link like the Ouroboros, that like tied in nice. We were like, hee hee. We wanted green because we were like sick of the pink and purple. The cards are very nice. I like cards.
I like cards too.
And the videos was a very good idea.
You can tell when people are looking at the videos to like learn the dance versus like when they don't have to look at the videos as much because they already know the dance.
That's interesting. Yeah. Ah, that's kind of cool, Chief. Is there anything else about design? I think... the font. The font. What font did we go? We're always so picky about fonts. We don't know what I'm like, this is the font. This is the one. We wanted it to look very clean. Like, we don't want it cluttered at all. We were like, this is going to be so simple. Just silver letters and a green background. I think as well, like, the song choices, honestly, shout out to Weekly Idol. Because we had like actually very decent songs to pick from.
Oh, how could I forget the videos, right?
Yeah.
Made in PowerPoint. Because I had an image in the head. I was like, I wanted to go from like title, and then all of a sudden it's gonna be like, boom, I'm so bad. That's what I had in. Then I had to add sound effects. So there's like a wind whoosh in there, like whoosh. I just want to hear it in your words, like what's your understanding of it from what I've told you?
Some sort of pre-made program, right, that we edited, and what it does is it tracks the idols' moves and their angles and their like precision, and then it compares that to the angles of the participants. You use the baseline 100% as a comparison of the same two idols.
I think this is a good point in the video to like mention that obviously we got this video idea from another YouTuber.
He compares the same group idols the same group dancing, like, to see how synchronized they are.
Yeah, and he has a bunch of other metrics and stuff like that. So I was just like, okay, he uses angles and stuff. But I found that angles weren't the best form of measure. So then I messaged my good friend and hit him up with a, how do you find out if two poses are similar? And he sends me a paper. And I'm like, this is exactly what I was looking for. It's actually this thing called OKS, which I tried to explain to Green. But okay, let me try again to explain it.
So if I don't understand it, it means you guys shouldn't have understood it. That's your test, Andy.
The person who it's being compared to, their skeleton gets like scaled and then moved to the origin. So it's like on the idol skeleton. So do you see how this is like a bit off? Yep. So then what happens is that each of these points, like these 2 points and these 2 points and all that, gets compared, and their distance is like sort of counted, like the distance between the points. The bigger the distance there is, the more penalized your score gets, but only until the sort of scale of the image.
Okay, how does it handle height then? Because if you're scaling a skeleton on a skeleton, if someone who's very tall entered, how would that scale? Because the distance would be bigger, no?
Say the idol's like really tall, big proportions and stuff, but then you have got someone who's like a bit shorter. Their skeleton basically gets stretched until their torso is the same length as the idol's. And if your torso is the same length, then most likely than not, your limbs will be the same length. Because like, if you want to also recalibrate the limbs, then that's a bit more complex, because you have to like get it set to an origin standard. So it's just much easier to like lengthen people's like from their head to like their pelvis, rather than like their entire body. Theoretically, that means that your torso should align perfectly with the idols, but obviously depending on how you stand, like if you're a bit bent, then it's going to scale properly, but the angle's going to be different at the head or the pelvis. When I first wrote the sort of, because you need to specify a few different numbers to make sure it's scoring the point, like the OKS score correctly. And I fine-tuned it to actual idols dancing, which meant that when I was running it with our first round of people, the scores were really, really low. Because they're not idols, I made the threshold bigger for like, oh, like if it's within this margin of error, then it's fine. Even like one of our dancers, she did something really well, and she got like 70% in one dance, and then like 57 in another. What's the difference here? And it's just mainly because some songs just score better. If the idols don't do it really sharp and very clean, then it doesn't get superimposed. So someone might be doing it better than the idol, but because we're comparing it the other way, it doesn't show.
People, like, we put the recommendations and the rules in the rulebook for a reason, and some people had worse lighting, or they were further away, or they wore the same colour, and it ended up meaning that they scored lower. Well, that's like, that sucks from Apollo's part, because it should just be focusing on you as a dancer. We tried to account for those errors in advance by saying, please do XYZ, so if that wasn't done, you scored lower. I guess not everyone fully read the rulebook, or they forgot, or they weren't able to do certain things, so that ended up reflecting in the scores. Something else that comes in was charisma. Like 100%, charisma is something that matters when you dance. Like, I'm not going to say it doesn't, but Apollo can't tell you how charismatic you are. So some dancers who we were like, oh wow, like they're like shining, they weren't actually they just weren't doing the dance as well. And again, maybe that charisma partly comes from human bias, so maybe that's good that we were avoiding that. But it's also like some people, I was like, oh, they killed that, and then it was like they did not score well at all. One of my dances, I was like dead. I was like just doing the moves to get them done because I needed to submit, and I scored very high, but there was like no no charisma from me. We learned it was a good competition. Of course there were going to be some issues, but I think it avoided a lot of the problems that you would have gotten from a person judged competition. I think it's actually such a good way to learn dances though. Like if there was something where you could just put yourself side by side and be like, oh, I missed like that point if I do this more.
I think it was in the final round, there was a song where like this one girl did it with so much charisma, so much, I was just like, damn, this is really good. But she didn't end up scoring that much, mainly because it wasn't emulating the idol.
The energy, you can have high energy, but if your energy isn't hitting the points, then your energy is wasted on Apollo.
That is quite an interesting point, which is like, oh, yeah, we want to avoid human bias, but by completely cutting out human bias in our scoring.
And it's like, then it brings in the question, should dance be judged by what it makes you feel or how good it is?
Because dance as well, like usual dance, because obviously K-pop dance, you are more likely than not covering something that already exists. So there is already a set baseline for what you should be doing. But if it's like a normal dance competition, obviously, like, you need bias in there because you need to measure artisticness, musicality, stuff like that. But do you really need that in a K-pop cover competition? On that, actually, yeah, because like the whole thing is like, oh yeah, does it work? So I think like with confidence, I can say yes, it works, because if you look at Mago, and there's this one point where like one of our dancers, so from Imperial's Icarus, she like brings in her hands too early, and you can see her score dip.
Oh.
And I was just like, I did not expect it to like, penalize her that much, because this is quite like far in. So I was just like, that's quite interesting that like, because she did the move wrong at that point.
Yeah.
It like her score dipped. Like the overall score doesn't matter, because the overall score is dependent on your overall like, how many times you've hit the points. But it's good at figuring out when you've done the moves completely wrong, because that's when it dips.
I noticed that like quite a few of the higher scorers were less seemingly confident, which was just interesting to me, because I feel like less confident dancers focus more on getting it right, because that's what whereas like a confident dancer is like, yeah, I can vibe with this, like I can do it the way. So I think that's quite interesting, noticing that like when someone's less experienced or feels like they're less capable, they're like, I need to hit this better, like I need to keep this sharper. It definitely did work. There's definitely room for improvement, which we will go on to, but it worked. Like it picked up when a move was good, when a move wasn't.
I think also like the overall rankings as well, I think it was like accurate. I agree with the rankings. Like sometimes I don't agree with the individual scores, but then again, like the scores are a bit biased depending on the idol, but I do agree with the overall ranking of it.
Not necessarily for Apollo, but I think emphasizing the rule book and being like, if you want a higher score, this is what you like. Because I think we didn't want to deter people, so we were like, we recommend doing this, because you don't want to be like, if you don't do this, you'll get a worse score. Being very clear, like if you want a better score, have good lighting, come close to the camera, wear these block colors, film in this FPS. Because I do think if we had been that strict, people would have been like, that's so intense, like we don't want to do all that. But now that they've experienced it once, they'll recognize that it's not as bad as it seems. But I think you could probably talk more on like the actual technical improvements.
I definitely think, because like a lot of the technical like scoring lies in how people have filmed, because obviously like everyone's filming from different angles, from different phones. I received a video that was entirely landscape, and I was like, I need this to be portrait, but obviously they'd like done the dance in landscape, so I had to like run their analysis on landscape, but then I had to superimpose the scoring.
Like Andy had to make more work for herself because people didn't pay enough attention, which just sounds so harsh, but like Andy picked up the slack for people.
I mean, like, hell, it's our competition, and it's just like, if we want high quality like things, might as well. I figured out what was causing the stretchy boy videos. I'll just put a picture of Jem. It was basically an encoding error on the way that they send their videos, because it was probably filmed as an MP4 and then changed to a MOV file when they like edit it in iMovie or something. But the encoding was so off for my Mac for some reason, I don't know why. So I had to basically put it into iMovie, rotate, export, re-rotate, put it back in, change the FPS. Oh. But anyways, it fixed the stretchy boy error, so that's I'm happy with that. Because otherwise in round one we had like 7 videos that were stretchy boys.
Do you think any improvements in terms of like not the the Apollo itself, but like the way we put it out?
For this time, we've completely gotten rid of anything artistic. We've only focused on the core moves and how close they are to the original. What we could do for next time, which I think would be really cool, is having another scoring system that measures artisticness of the dance. I didn't think of adding a sort of musicality factor in it. Like, it would be a lot more work because you'd have to train a model on artisticness, but it is doable.
The point of Apollo was to eradicate bias, which I think fine. But what would you think of having a small portion of people voting? For example, for the individual scorers, like the individual top scorers, you could be like, okay, these were the top 5. Now each university is going to have one vote that they're going to put, like something like that. But again, that brings in other difficulties. But I'm just like wondering about ever integrating Apollo with
Human bias.
Yeah, because sometimes human bias is like we already said, like some stuff that matters.
To that, I raise you, what if we just have a live competition where we have Apollo running as another judge? Because that also resolves the matter of like filming angles and lighting and stuff.
It gets rid of the problems that Apollo,
It gets rid of all the problems that Apollo has had. And it also means that we do introduce human error back in to understand musicality.
50-50.
like Apollo's 50%.
Yeah.
That'd be quite cool, but also seems very hard because doesn't Apollo take hours to run?
It takes an hour, but that was because I was putting in all the videos. Well, I only did it for like 2 weeks. Jem did the third one. Literally, the third week, right? I just pre-processed all the video. I sent it all to Jem and I was just like, run it please. I don't have time. What takes more time is actually building the program, because each time you run it, which is why it, like every week it took an hour, because like 15 minutes of that was to actually build the program. But if you already have it built and we're just literally recording people, feeding the video back in to Apollo and getting the score out, that should only take 5 minutes. Obviously Apollo, we did it as a solo contest, but there is actual functionality for it to be a multi-person contest. Another thing was, I think because a lot of universities felt a bit irked by the results.
But I think if people are getting irked, they have to remember that all universities were judged on the same basis. Like, it's not like we picked their university and we were like, no, you're going to be judged as professionals. So even if the judging was harsher, it was harsher on everyone equally, so it doesn't matter. And so people might have been like, I think this person did this dance better, and like, yeah, but they didn't hit the points better, which is what we were testing precision and timing. I don't think anyone got annoyed to the point where they were like, oh, this is an unfair rigged one, blah, 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 because you can't, like, it can't be rigged, like, we can't rig it. All in all, went as well as it could have done, especially considering, like, we improved upon the errors, like, we improved the competition as the weeks went on. I think maybe an issue as well was like the fact that some songs did just score better than others, and so if a uni took part in this song and not in this one, they would want a better score, which but I don't think it would have made such a difference as like it would have changed the rankings by that, like by anything really.
In the end, like the songs like girl group and boy group, we do end up averaging them. A few universities did end up getting their submissions in later than the deadline, which
I think they should have been penalised for, but Andy did not penalise them.
I didn't want to penalise because it's just like shit happens. Green's camera broke. So you'll just...
No, I just think like an improvement would be somehow incorporating human opinion. I don't want to say human bias because I feel like human opinion, if bias is reduced down, you get human opinion. Makes sense?
Yeah.
So like having some sort of like human people thoughts of like charisma and confidence, like how well you think they like drew you in would be good, but not to the extent of like it just making an AI judge pointless.
Apollo just felt a bit like a black box, right? Because people just got a score out and they didn't really see exactly what went into it. So hopefully through this video they'll kind of see like the effort we put into it.
Yeah. So like, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification.
As Green said, smash that like button, make sure to like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll be able to.
Thank you. And we hope this has answered any questions, or like if you want to know more about the competition, you have been satiated.
So, yeah. And hopefully Apollo will be coming to a city near you soon.